From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. I'm Ty Morgan, and here's what's in store over the next 16 minutes. As GOP presidential nominee locked in his pick for VP this week, where the 39-year-old stands on trade and ag.
He's for the tariffs. That's his America First tag. There is some concern there on the part of the ag sector.
Plus, more signs of trouble brewing in the farm economy, why it's an issue that will be taken up in Washington next week. Flooding across the U.S. We'll show you areas impacted most. And a look at some gentle giants.
The kids are what's selling the 4-H project.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Pioneer. Great performance in the field makes Pioneer brand corn #1 in America. For a winning season, it's Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Now for the news, rural America taking center stage after the attempted assassination of former President Trump near the grounds of a farm show in western Pennsylvania. Larissa Ream is a dairy farmer who was at the rally last Saturday. She and her family were directly in front of the president's podium when shots rang out.
We instantly kind of crouched down. I wouldn't say we ever even fully hit the ground. We just kind of crouched down, kind of checking to see, just because we were so close, checking to make sure that the president was okay.
Ream says usually you read about this kind of thing in history books, but you never expect to witness it. After the shooting, President Trump traveled to Milwaukee and the Republican National Convention, where he was officially named the party's nominee. He also named his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. We'll have more on this wild week for our nation and in politics coming up in our Farm Journal report. Farmers in the northwestern Corn Belt have lost hundreds of thousands of acres in cropland due to flooding, and some areas are already seeing disease pressure because of it.
Risk is elevated. We know that in kind of the northwest area, as in particular, you look at Iowa, you see some gray leaf spot risk potential. We already know that we have southern rust on the borders of the state of Illinois, over in Missouri and other locations, which is kind of an early start. And we already have tar spot when it comes to corn.
And it continued to be a wet week in several places, including Vermont, with more than 100 people and their animals needing rescued after the remnants of Tropical Storm Beryl drenched the state. In one case, neighbors came together to rescue 20 head of cattle trapped in floodwaters when the La Platte River went beyond its banks. According to the National Weather Service, the region received its monthly rainfall amounts for all of July in just one day. A feed store in Barnett, Vermont, lost power.
Feed's got to roll out here every day or animals are going to go hungry, so we have really no choice but to get power back.
And thanks to a big effort by locals, crews removed rocks from a washed out road and the power crew was able to get in and restore electricity so feed could be mixed for thousands of animals. But Vermont was not alone. Areas in the Midwest were also hard hit, including northern Arkansas, where more than a month's worth of rain fell in just a few hours early on Wednesday. As much as 11 inches of rain fell in parts of Marion County, Arkansas, which is in the Ozark Mountains. Emergency management officials say a section of a bridge washed out and historic courthouse was flooded. And more flooding concerns this time for producers in southern Illinois. The Washington County Emergency Management Agency warning that a secondary dam has failed in Nashville, Illinois. It posted this map on Facebook saying the dam was overtopped with floodwaters, warning people that failure of the Nashville Dam was imminent and to evacuate. The National Weather Service said 5 to 7 inches of rain fell over an 8-hour period. And elsewhere, the problem is not enough of rain, which is causing wildfires to grow. Right now, crews in Oregon are battling several wildfires across the state, including the Larch Creek, Lone Rock, Cow Valley, and Falls fires. The Falls fire is burning 20 miles northeast of Riley, Oregon. Crews say hot, dry, and windy conditions caused the fire to grow rapidly. It has already burned through 64,000 acres. And we've been keeping you updated on this. Layoffs at the world's largest ag equipment maker, John Deere. And now there are reports it will lay off even more people next week. Several news agencies in Iowa reporting Deere & Company is planning to announce layoffs that will impact salaried positions, and that will happen on Wednesday. They're citing a letter that it claims was sent to employees this week. The company is saying in the letter declining customer demand along with rising costs and economic uncertainties as reasons for the possible additional layoffs. In total, John Deere has laid off nearly 2,000 workers between September of this year to earlier this month. All right, that's it for the news. Well, you just saw flooding across parts of the country while the West saw more heat this week, but it was a major cool down in the Midwest. We'll have a check of your forecast coming up next.
U.S. Farm Report weather is brought to you by H&S Manufacturing. Maximize baleage yield with less time and effort with the LW1100 line wrap bale wrapper. You can wrap round or square bales, and the automatic operating mode allows for a one-person operation.
Matt Engelbrecht joining us now with weather. Matt, we saw areas of Arkansas see up to 11 inches of rain in just 4 hours. That area typically seeing 3.5 to 4 inches of rain during the entire month of July. So what is causing these strong and intense storms that continue to hit parts of the country?
That's a great question, Tyne. Yeah, last week, what we were dealing with was, I wouldn't call it a strong cold front. Strong cold fronts, they develop and they can push all the way across the United States. It was a cold front, but it was rather weak, which means as it moved to the south, it actually pulled up stationary. Where that boundary was located, you mentioned Arkansas, that is where we saw the heaviest rain over and over. It kind of is not only the focus, but also the trigger mechanism for showers. If that boundary doesn't move, you keep getting heavy rainfall over the same focal point, which is that cold front. Now here's a look at that drought monitor. This does include, remember Beryl, the remnants of Beryl came through portions of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and then back up here to the north and to the northeast. You can actually see where that drought has been alleviated, and not only because of the remnants of Beryl, but also some rain afterwards as well. So that's why things are looking a lot better in regards to the drought back up here to the northeast, but also back into the Midwest as well, into Texas and Louisiana, where some of that Beryl moisture was located. We don't have a drought either. So we'll keep an eye on that drought monitor. The estimated rainfall over the next 7 days, where we don't have a drought, don't have much in the way of rain either. The large pattern keeps most of the rain, the heaviest rain, back around Texas, Louisiana, into the south and to the southeast. Really can't shake the rainfall. You've probably experienced that the last couple of days in North and South Carolina. It's been shower after shower, day after day, and this pattern, unfortunately, is going to stick all the way through. Now, it looks like most of this week. So Tuesday and Wednesday, it might finally start to break down. So where you're seeing the reds, the yellows, and the oranges, heavy rain, obviously the yellow and the green, much lighter rain. We don't have any rain, but we need it, especially in this kind of pattern, back into Montana, the Northwest, and California, where it is hot and where it is dry. So looking at that jet stream, so for you Monday and Tuesday, what we're trying to find is this pattern breaking down. Otherwise, the weather that we've had the last couple of days, that is going to continue for the next couple of days. So Monday and Tuesday, you still have a ridge of high pressure back out here to the west coast, and then also some heat trying to build back into the southeast. A shallow trough will try to come through Wednesday and Thursday. What that is going to do is reinforce some cooler air, possibly some rain chances, some thunderstorms into parts of Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan by Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Otherwise, the heat is on once again through the United States.
Thanks, Matt. Well, that rain bringing even more drought relief on the drought monitor, but it's too wet in other areas, impacting the crops. We'll talk about it in our marketing roundtables with Tommy Grisafi and Dwayne Bussey next. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Tommy Grisafi and Dwayne Bussey joining us this weekend. A lot of news to digest this week, and we hit on it some in our news block, but we also had a lot of volatility in the stock market. Tommy, is any of that volatility in the stock market, did it spill over into ag commodities?
A little bit. Something unique happened on Wednesday. We had the Dow Jones close at record highs, and the NASDAQ have one of its worst days in 6 months to a year. And, I watch the markets. I see NASDAQ having a horrible day. You sell Dow rallied a few hundred points above. Huge rotation out of sectors. The Russell stock market blew up. What's it mean to someone in ag, someone who has corn, wheat, beans, cattle? It didn't affect it that much. But as we come into another weekend, and we're all a little jittery from last weekend, you have to wonder, will we be paying a little bit more attention to breaking news headlines as we come in to this election cycle. 100 days left to the election. I do think politics will have a significant move in agriculture in the next 100 days.
Well, Dwayne, speaking of that, we did have a lot of news also in ag. One of those, we did see a large export sale, 18.74 million bushels of soybeans for delivery to unknown destinations during the 2024-2025 marketing year. A lot of assumptions out there that was China, Dwayne.
Yeah, there has been. A couple days before that, we had heard they were looking at U.S. soybean prices out of the PNW. It's 6 or 7 cargoes, so that kind of matches up well. Normally an export sales flash that size would rally the market sharply, but in this case, we're so far behind the new crop export sales that our normal pace, it just kind of maybe stabilized the market, stopped it from going down, which I'll take that at this point in time as a producer myself.
Well, speaking of export sales being behind, that export news came out the morning following J.D. Vance, who's now officially the VP nominee for the Republican Party, stating at the RNC that he would be tough on trade. Tommy, he said, quote, Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico, end quote. He also pointed to tough policy on China. So with the potential for an even tougher stance on China in the future, could we see China come in and have even more buys in the coming weeks and months?
There's a certain amount of grain they need, and there's a certain amount of people they can get it from. It's so easy to poke fun at politicians, especially when you've been in the game for 50 years. If you were broadcasting for 50 years, I bet you we'd have a heck of a blooper reel. The truth is, getting politics out of it, China needs X amount of grain, and when they need it, they're going to come to us. Maybe we saw a little taste of that this week, maybe a little bit more to come.
Dwayne, you mentioned soybean prices. We need more export sales. We talked about that with Tommy too. But do you think soybeans have some weather premium still built in?
Yeah, actually, sadly, I think they do still, because, the month of August is probably the most critical month for soybean development, and the updated forecast this week for the extended forecast for August is for hot temperatures. That doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily dry. It looks like about normal precip, but no, we could still have a weather scare in soybeans. And yeah, it's possible there's maybe up to $1 still in weather premium in this market. But to Tommy's point, China needs to buy soybeans eventually from us. And we are at a sale here. We're at 3 to 4 year lows. So I wouldn't see why they wouldn't step in and buy more.
Okay, let's switch over to corn because, Tommy, we had some amazing weather come in this week, cooler temperatures, great pollination weather. However, the corn crop isn't perfect everywhere. We've got some problems up where Dwayne is, up in South Dakota. We've got problems in Minnesota, problems in Wisconsin, problems on the East Coast, the South. More flooding this week. We have a lot of problems out there. But when you look at the Midwest, we are setting on a potentially great crop this year.
Absolutely. We're coming into a large chunk pollinating. As you said, drought monitor maps were out in the last 12 hours. Zero drought in the state of Iowa. Maybe if you're out there in your Iowa, you have a drought, send us a picture. But we look at the I-State, zero drought. The people with the biggest problems are screaming the loudest. The people with the best crops are shocked in the sense that they're undersold, underprotected. And as their bushels grow, crop insurance levels that protect that price are actually dropping. So the math of the have and have nots will come down to what's forward sold, what's forward protected. You better get out the calculator. And if you're above APH, crop insurance isn't kicking in.
Well, are we getting close to a low for corn? We're going to ask Dwayne that when we come back.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Welcome back. All right. Well, Tommy, talking about that beautiful looking corn crop across parts of the Midwest. But Dwayne, where you are, I know you mentioned things don't look great. So we want to know, are we getting close to a low for corn, but also talk about crop conditions up in that northern Corn Belt area?
I did start to smile a little bit when you guys were talking about pollination, because I was thinking I'm not even close to seeing a tassel pop out of my cornfields up here, which maybe isn't crazy unheard of this far north, but we are definitely behind. Now, that doesn't mean we can't produce bushels. I always go back to 2009, horribly wet corn, really late harvest, but we did have bushels. Now, USA didn't find out that we didn't have the total bushels. That crop shrunk in the bin, basically. You fill the 20,000 bushel bin, you only took out 15,000 because it was poor quality and very wet. So, I mean, yeah, there's holes out there. I'm think we're close to a trend line. 177, 181 for a national corn yield is what I would use. But to get to answer your actual question, the corn market, I guess I do think we're close to a low. I always had 393 as kind of a harvest low projection for D's corn. We're not far off of that. The first sign of a low is just running out of sellers, and the trade action lately is starting to look that way, but that doesn't mean we have to go straight back up though either.
Tommy, there's a lot of nervousness out there. You have on panic selling right now and just the dilemma that producers are facing.
That's a great question. Get in control of at least 1 year. So it'd be awesome if you said, I have nothing to worry about with 23, that grain's gone. Then getting 100% control of 24, whether it be making cash sales, using futures and options, etc. Talk to your crop insurance agent. If you're bold and aggressive, be smart enough to remember, you do not have crop insurance on 25. I need you to get in control of one whole crop year. If you want to invest a little bit of money in 25 floors, I suggest it might be the best money you lose. Let's take a chance of losing 15, 20 cents so we don't lose another dollar.
Switching to wheat, Dwayne. Wheat futures seeing some upside price correction this week after edging lower the past few sessions before that. Now, U.S. dollar weakness did lend some price support. But what about global demand? It's picking up, and so is export demand. Is that aiding wheat futures right now?
I think it is, and I'm actually super excited to talk somewhat friendly about wheat because it's been years and years since I feel like I've been somewhat bullish wheat. Now, I got to say we have a beautiful spring wheat crop coming up here in the northern plains. Definitely probably going to be a record yield. But to your point, global demand is growing. Our exports are starting to pick up here a little bit, obviously helped by the lower U.S. dollar that you just mentioned. So, it's hard to predict highs and lows, and I shouldn't go on one show and predict we're close to a low in corn and say we're close to a low in wheat, but I'll be that guy that sticks his neck out there, puts my head in the noose and say that I do think wheat is close to a harvest low here too. And with some better demand in the future, I think we can actually rally that market. It might be the first grain to actually rally out of this doldrum.
Tommy, do you agree with that?
Things are on sale. Let's take off our farmer cap, which Dwayne plays both farmer and he doesn't play. He is a farmer and a commodity broker and a crop insurance salesman. Put on your end user cap. The whole world is thanking the American farmer. They get to buy grain $1 under their cost of production in many of them. And we're starting to hit that $1.50, $2 level in some of these commodities. 2 years ago, you were selling grain $2 above your cost of production. Let's hope you don't sell it to the rest of the world $2 below your cost of production.
All right, real quick, Dwayne, USDA's cattle on feed report. We're having this discussion before they're out with their cattle on feed report Friday afternoon. But when you look at some of those expectations leading into the report, you look at the price action that we've seen, especially with some of that bleeding over from the stock market. What advice do you have for cattle producers in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, even before we get the cattle on feed report, I don't like the price action. It feels a little bit like this market's topping. Now, it's really hard to go out there and hedge on the live cattle board because it's at such a discount to cash. But the feeder market board, the feeder futures are right with the cash market. I really like cow-calf producers going out, protecting those price levels. I mean, these are great price levels. And like to Tommy's point, we all can kind of look back and see what we should have done in grains. Let's not let this opportunity pass up as a cow-calf producer. Let's protect these prices.
All right, Tommy, Dwayne, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this weekend. We need to take a quick break, and then we're checking in with Machinery Pete next.
Hey, welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week we're off to Kansas to check out a Case DC that has a ton of hours on it, but it still starts like it's brand new.
We have here a family tractor, been in the family since day one. It's a 1951 DC Case, and this tractor was used heavily for many years, rebuilt multiple times. One of the nice things about the DC Case that my dad appreciated was, compared to several other models, it has an oil clutch, and you never needed to replace the clutch. This tractor has thousands and thousands of hours on it, and it's still got the original clutch in it. With the easy steering, my mom worked in the field, and she always liked to use this one because it did not have power steering, but it steered very easily. It's been a good tractor, and because of the fact that it goes back to my childhood, I remember it very well. I've never seen my dad drive it, I've never seen my mom drive it, and it's always been very reliable. I like all my tractors, but on a cold day, You step on the starter, and this tractor starts. It's absolutely amazing. Turns over about 3 times in its running. So it's earned its keep, and it's one of my family favorites.
Still to come, there was focus on trade during the Republican National Convention this week, and it may give hints toward how tough of a stance on trade a Trump-Vance administration would take if elected in November. So what would it mean for ag? That's our Farm Journal report next.
You're watching U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition.
It was a big week for news on the political front, including now GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump announcing his running mate, J.D. Vance. But what would a Trump-Vance ticket mean for ag? And how did the assassination attempt in rural Pennsylvania change the tone leading into the RNC? That's this weekend's Farm Journal report.
Take a look at what happened.
An act of political violence shook the U.S. last weekend. An assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump on the grounds of a farm show happened in rural western Pennsylvania. Indiana farmer Kip Tom, who served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations during the Trump administration, was in attendance on Saturday. He was sitting in the front row. Tom detailing what happened to AgriTalk's Chip Flory this week.
My mind quickly, as soon as I saw or heard the bullet, the gunfire, as soon as I saw the president go down, the first thing that flashed in my mind was the JFK assassination, and just what all transpired after that, and how our nation actually changed course when we went under Lyndon B. Johnson, and just how the administration at that time dealt with the plenty of issues that our country was facing at that time. So this could have been big event, changing the pathway for our nation moving forward in the future. But fortunately for the president, he's okay.
Larissa Ream, a dairy farmer in Pennsylvania, was also in the crowd. Her brother is a dairy farmer just down the road from the Butler Farm Show site, and she grew up showing livestock there.
They were asked to provide the equipment to kind of flank the stage for the president. We ended up being the second row directly in front of the podium.
Ream describes it as a hot day. And as Trump went off script, pulling up some graphics to talk about illegal immigration into the U.S., that's when things changed.
He had actually turned to look at the screen is when the gunshots started going off and everything kind of escalated from there.
She says the crowd stayed relatively calm, even though chaos had just ensued.
Everyone was kind of had this sense of like patriotism, like if they needed to, they'd jump into action if they were needed. And it's just kind of crazy.
Tom also describing the surreal scene on AgriTalk this week.
It almost feels a little bit like what 9/11 did. People seem more unified. When I watched the people leave where the rally was being held there in Butler, Pennsylvania, you saw people that didn't know any of the other ones there helping the elderly get out. They helped them with their children. And I'm telling you, today I'm up here at the RNC convention in Milwaukee, and you just feel the vibes of what it's like to see a unified party and how people are trying to make sure we make America great again.
Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer also noticing change in the tone and demeanor of Trump.
I remember former President Reagan saying, when he was attempted assassination, it changed his life. And I think it will Trump. And he's already changing his tone.
But the biggest news coming from the RNC happened earlier in the week. And that was when Trump picked his running mate, J.D. Vance, a 39-year-old Republican senator from Middletown, Ohio.
And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
Vance, a Marine Corps veteran, author, and entrepreneur, has only been in the Senate since January of 2023.
That could hold him in good stead, by the way, because he's a non-politician.
Not a career politician, he was an author before running for office. And Wiesmeyer says when it comes to policy, he's a nationalist. Raised in the Rust Belt, Vance believes in bringing more manufacturing jobs back to the U.S.
When I was in the 4th grade, a career politician by the name of Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs.
But when it comes to agriculture and trade, Wiesmeyer says Vance is more aligned with Bob Lighthizer, who was the previous U.S. trade representative under Trump.
Definitely, he is tariff. He's for the tariffs. That's his America First tag. And so I see him in sync with President Trump. And there's some concern there on the part of the ag sector of what that would mean on retaliation, also what it would mean to China. I quoted a UBS report this morning saying it would be a significant drawback for China's gross domestic product. So, but they're not going to flinch. Trump and Lighthizer and now J.D. Vance, if they get in, you're going to see tariffs, period.
Wiesmeyer points out Vance received the Friend of Agriculture Award from the Ohio Farm Bureau, and he says that tells him that Vance is more aligned with many of Farm Bureau's principles and priorities. But as someone who is not a career politician, he says Vance is also willing to work across the aisle.
He is bipartisan in spirit and has some strange bedfellows. Elizabeth Warren he has worked with in the anti-corporate area. So that's his nationalist coming out. He's doesn't like a monopoly or a monopolist tone for any firm. So he's allied with her on that. He applauded the appointment of Khan in the regulatory area. Lisa Khan, which will surprise a lot of people.
Now, the Democratic National Convention will be held from August 19th and will run through August 22nd. We'll have coverage on that next month. Well, when we come back, Ukraine seized a vessel of looted grain. That and other headlines from around the globe are next. Now for a look at ag around the globe. The European Commission is authorizing 2 genetically modified corn crops for human food and animal feed. It is also renewing the authorization for another one. The European Commission saying in a news release the commissioner's decisions will only allow GM corn to be imported for use in food and animal feed, not to be cultivated in the EU. It says the crops have gone through a comprehensive and stringent assessment, and that the European Food Safety Authority concluded the genetically modified corn is as safe as their conventional counterparts. The authorizations are valid for 10 years. Well, increasing rainfall is helping improve conditions at the Panama Canal. The shipping thoroughfare expected to return to more normal traffic levels later this summer. The rain helping alleviate the severe drought, which forced a reduction in the number of ships capable of passing through the locks. The Canal Authority says the daily bookings are up to 35 from just 24 imposed last November. La Nina is expected to keep rains falling through the summer. The situation in Ukraine continues to escalate. Ukraine announcing it has seized a ship accused of selling looted grain. The Security Service of Ukraine says it seized a foreign cargo ship in the Black Sea on suspicion of helping Moscow export Ukrainian grain. The vessel was traveling under the flag of a Central African country. Officials report it docked repeatedly at the Crimean seaport of Sevastopol in 2023 and 2024, adding that the captain and crew helped Russia export the grain taken from the occupied South to the Middle East and sold on behalf of Russia. This is not the first time there have been accusations of Russia stealing grain. In 2022, the Wall Street Journal investigated a sophisticated system of feeder vessels, floating cranes used to smuggle grain, typically from Sevastopol to larger cargo ships waiting at sea, claiming Russia's largest grain trader shipped thousands of tons of stolen Ukrainian grain to global buyers. That's a look at ag around the globe. Well, more signs of trouble in the ag economy. Chip's Corner is next. Welcome back for Chip's Corner this weekend. Jim Wiesmeyer filling in for Chip. He's on the road this week. Jim, thanks again for your analysis on the RNC and Trump's vice presidential pick and what that would mean for ag. But let's switch gears to the ag economy because Creighton University's Rural Main Street Index out this week showing concern about the ag economy among ag lenders. Ernie Goss, who authors that survey, Jim, saying that weak agricultural commodity prices, sinking ag equipment sales, and declining farm exports push the overall index lower. But Jim, it's also inflation and costs. I mean, farmers have experienced $4 corn before. That is not new. What is new is how high prices are and that those prices do not seem to be coming down.
Absolutely. And the production costs needed to produce a crop. I mean, even the Secret Service director could figure this one out. To me, it's so obvious. Key, this coming Tuesday, July 23rd, the House Ag Committee, you talk about good timing, they have a hearing on the ag financial situation. And that's the first, regretfully, I think, of several that's going to have to take place over the next 6 months to a year. Because, as you indicated, it looks like we could have very big corn and soybean production, at least corn, perhaps record, even though there are rain spots all over, too much rain in a lot of areas. I met with the Minnesota corn growers in Washington, D.C. this week. And one farmer told me recently he has received 31 inches of rain. But let's get to the subject. The price situation. If you get to 350 to 375 corn futures, which some people say you will, there'll be a lot of pain on that. And let's bridge that into what could happen. I will guarantee you there's going to be a disaster aid bill in Congress, not just for agriculture, but for other sectors. But that won't take place until after the August recess. Now, we could see some additional aid that way. But I also want to bridge into this is the most obvious need to get a new farm bill done this calendar year, because our current safety net will be found very wanting as a result of what looks like to be low to very low prices ahead.
Jim, I mean, we're talking about how much the farm economy has eroded, but I'm hearing some banks that are already calling ag loans. I mean, it is dire in some of these areas, and it has switched so quickly.
Well, that's the history of banking is when they get nervous, they don't think twice. They'll call in their weakest loans, and you're beginning to see it. I don't know how widespread. I know you and others at Farm Journal and AgWeb and ProFarmer were trying to get a sense of that. We may find that out next Tuesday. I haven't got a witness list yet, but hopefully Farm Credit, Ag Bankers Association will be there, but we'll be checking in with them. Then you have on top of this, Tyne, you have policy concerns of farmers, and I think legitimate policy concerns. I'm not going to get into politics per se here, but both political parties have turned protectionist when it comes to trade policy. And look at the demarcation we have between U.S. and China right now. Any soybean or corn producers asking, what's the future of U.S.-China trade relations? What's the future of U.S. trade policy in the years ahead? Those are legitimate concerns that they have.
Well, if you haven't had enough of Jim Wiesmeyer this weekend, I know I haven't, you can check him out on Unscripted this week. Clinton and I host Unscripted every week, and we break down the RNC, just kind of all of the political news. There was so much news to digest this week. We do that with Jim Wiesmeyer on Unscripted this weekend. All right, we need to take a quick break, and then some gentle giants. We're going to take you to Indiana next. If you've ever seen a draft horse in person, you know they are massive animals. Draft horses can stand over 6 feet tall and weigh as much as 2,500 pounds. But despite their size, these gentle giants have found their way into the hearts of 4-H'ers in LaPorte County, Indiana. Our own photojournalist, Russ Natesco, takes us to LaPorte County Fair to see the 4-H wagon masters at work.
The rain has changed our scheduling. We have to get a plan together how we're going to make the day go. We are the biggest 4-H draft horse club in the U.S. We're not going out trying to recruit kids. The kids are what's selling the 4-H project.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes. You have to do a mane roll in the mane and braid their foretop and their tail, put a tail bow in. And that's mainly for showing horses. When you're at big shows and stuff, they do that for halter classes and hitch.
We have grades 3 through 5 represent our juniors, 6 through 8 grades represent our intermediates, 9 through 12 represent our seniors.
So you did a very nice job.
Thank you. Well, it's going through my mind is making sure Woody, it looks good, and making sure I smile and having a fun time mostly.
We've got inner city kids, we've had country kids, and it's just giving everybody an opportunity to get hands-on with draft horses.
The people in the Draft Horse Club, that's something that also brought me to it, because the people we're all support each other, we all help each other out.
The families, the kids will sell the project and we'll get new kids coming in. So it's just a snowball effect of keeping this tradition alive. I mean, like I said, 55 kids this year, we've maintained them numbers for the last 10 years.
This club, you don't have to own your own horses. You can just come in and the 4-H leaders will assign you an owner and you show their horses.
Just learning to trust the horse. Working with them definitely helps to just trust them, and you gain respect for them and they gain respect for you.
Draft horses in general, they're majestic creatures, but almost mythical, but they're really sweet and kind.
You're thinking these little kids that are this tall weigh 80 pounds, how are they going to handle a ton horse? But they're gentle giants. They respect the little kids. They know they're there. The horses are very smart.
I'm very happy that it's the 50th anniversary, and I can't wait for it to be the 100th in the next 50 years.
Do you think you'd be running it?
Maybe. Who knows?
A lot of these horse owners enjoy working with these kids. A few of them might not even have kids. And everybody appreciates the time and the dedication that these kids want to put into this. Because like I said, this is so unique. You don't see this anywhere.
Hi, baby.
4-H helps youth develop skills, knowledge, and wisdom through experimental learning. And for some, it sparks career aspiration. That's the case for a past few members of the Wagon Masters. They've seen some who went on to work with draft horses up in Mackinac Island and also at Budweiser with the Clydesdales. All right, when we come back, celebrating a historical milestone. From the Farm is next. A sweet summertime treat will soon be coming to a table near you. As John Holcomb of the Georgia Farm Monitor tells us, one farm battled the elements and rising costs to deliver sweet summer watermelons just in time for the season.
Nothing says summertime quite like a big, juicy, sweet watermelon. Thankfully, Georgia has plenty of producers that grow them, pack them, and get them into stores for people to enjoy during the summer months. One operation that's busy doing just that is Bloodworth Farms.
It was really, really wet in the early spring. We were struggling to get field work done. We hold a lot of water here. Our dirt's kind of heavy, so it made tillage and things like that very difficult. We were very crunched. We were down to the date, but the rain didn't stop. We got them planted. The rain kept coming, and we battled disease.
Thankfully, the harvest season is going much better. As Bloodworth says, the rains have slacked off, which allows them to get in and out of their fields with ease.
It's been perfect. All in all, harvest season has been as good as you can ask for.
However, Bloodworth says another challenge this year has been his overall cost of production continuing to rise, which in the end gets passed along to the consumer and can end up creating issues with demand.
I did not realize how far over my initial budget I was. It might not be a a big increase, but at the end, when every single one of them has increased a little bit, the bottom line is it has greatly increased over the production that we've had in the past, 3 or 4 years.
Despite those challenges this season, though, Bloodworth says the crop has turned out to be worth the headache.
So far, the demand has been good. I was really expecting the prices to be borderline, hey, is it even going to be worth picking? But they've been decent. We've had a lot better, but to be honest with you, we've been very fortunate.
Reporting in Rochelle for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
Thanks, John. And to close out the show, a look back in history as it was 55 years ago this weekend. History was made.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Those famous words were said 55 years ago as Neil Armstrong walked on the surface of the moon, the first astronaut to ever do so. Armstrong's Apollo 11 space mission touched down on the moon at 10:56 p.m. Eastern, July 20th, 1969. NASA is celebrating the 55th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing all this week. And just this week, scientists announced their discovery of the first cave on the moon. It's actually right next to where the Apollo 11 landed. Some scientists speculate it could even provide some shelter from temperature extremes on a future mission. Well, that does it for U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next weekend as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.